Hi, good morning. I hope you were all able to do homework. Okay, who did not do homework? Tell me honestly. No response to that? Okay, who was not present yesterday? Tell me that.
Hi Shweta, I just joined, so I didn't do the homework or the classes previously.
Okay, Akshit. Everybody else was there yesterday? Okay, Isha did the homework partially. Cool. What we're going to do is then we'll come back to the homework. We'll circle back after I finish the new type of question that I want to do. We've talked about primary purpose, we've talked about factual questions. We have to talk about two, three very important types of questions next. You should know what are the different types of questions that we are going to deal with. We are going to talk about the logical structure question. Some people call this a function question, but I think it's a little more than just a function question. So we will deal with it. There is tone or attitude, tone of the passage, attitude of the author towards something. Then we have something called sentence selection, which is very GRE specific. It doesn't happen on GMAT. You are asked to select a sentence as an answer to a question. Something else that's very GRE specific is vocab in context. What does this particular word mean in this context? And the GRE vocab that you're learning separately for vocab questions, that may not necessarily help in this case. Then we have the inference question. And something known as further application. What the GRE does is that it clubs critical reasoning under the head of reading comprehension. And they give you only one or two critical reasoning questions across the section anyway. So let's say that a subset of reading comprehension is critical reasoning. But what's going to happen is there are some questions on critical reasoning which have a direct overlap with RC. So if we look at types of questions on critical reasoning, We'll have two varieties. What is independent of RC and what is common to RC? Inference is common. You'd get that on CR, you'd get that on RC. Strengthen the argument, weaken the argument, evaluate the argument. These can occur on both. So I am not going to do strengthen, weaken, evaluate as part of RC. When we think of strengthen, weaken, evaluation, we'll say, hey, they just come under inference. We'll bucket it here. But directly, this is the overlap. By extension, this is the overlap. What will be unique to CR? Usually, assumption questions don't come directly on RC. Usually, they're a part of CR only. Then we have something called boldface, para completion, rebuttal or dialogue based questions. There is a concept of paradox which is tested differently on CR and differently on RC, but the concept is the same. So we're going to do all these things for critical reasoning, which may seem like a lot of work for two-word questions. But like I said, CR should be looked upon as an extension of reading comprehension. You shouldn't be doing RCCR in rigid buckets. So whatever you do for RC will indirectly help you with CR and vice versa. We've seen people who have good accuracy with critical reasoning actually can have great accuracy on reading comprehension if they just read the passages better for structure instead of getting lost in meaning. So I'm not going to look at all the time that we spent on, let's say we spend a whole week on critical reasoning. I'm going to not going to look at that as an overinvestment on one or two questions. So what we'll do today is something that is relevant across, which is inference. This is what we're going to pick up. From a weightage point of view, how many questions does it carry? The highest weightage is to this category because inference and related concepts will comprise of 50% at least of reading comprehension. Before we get into solving for inference, how do we solve it as a question type? We should look at the philosophy behind inference. So let's start with Bhavisha. Bhavisha, when I say that I want to draw an inference, what does that mean? What does it mean to you to draw an inference?
Like in terms of the context given, find how it like relates here, like find some meaning to it.
Okay. Anybody else wants to add to it? Aditi, what does it mean to draw an inference?
It means to draw a conclusion or a plausible conclusion with in the context of what the author is trying to say.
Draw a conclusion, okay? I'm going to take that. Or just tell me, draw a conclusion on the basis of what?
Draw a conclusion basically on the basis of your assumption of the understanding of the para.
Sanjay, draw a conclusion on the basis of what?
On the understanding of the passage, man, or what the author is trying to say. Something that is not deliberately given, but that is what the author means.
Okay, I'm going to go to one more person and ask Nirav, draw a conclusion on the basis of what?
Draw a conclusion on the basis of the logical facts given in the
Yes, draw a
passage.
conclusion on the basis of the given information. So, yes, you're drawing a conclusion, but on the basis of what? On the basis of what data has been given to you? Assumptions and inferences, they may share characteristics. Let's say I am the author, you are the reader. I'm coming up with a statement. My statement is, if I remove this word therefore, I want to write, I want a pen. There may not be any connect between these two. I might as well say I want to write, I want a hat. Why should these be connected? But the moment I put therefore, let me make this better. The moment I do this, the situation changes. Now there's a relationship between these 2 points. So, what inference can you draw from what I've written as an author? What inference are you going to draw as a reader? Anurag, what inference will you draw from here?
Uh, the inference is the medium of writing is a pen.
Medium of writing. What if I say
Sorry,
I need a hat? Then
first one is dependent on the second. Like the first part of action is dependent on the second.
okay, Ayush, what inference will you draw?
Based on I need a hat. So the conclusion is like the author is writing and other wants to write, and uh, the author also needs a hat. So I don't see a connection between like why a hat should be needed to write. So but the author suggests that author needs a hat to write.
Okay, Sayanara,
Yeah. Based on this, a hat is required to write something.
can we say
That's that's-
that the inference I can draw is that hat and writing are connected?
yes, yeah, because of therefore.
Correct. Therefore, is connecting them. We don't know what's the connection. It could be a thinking hat, could be a writing hat, whatever it is. There's a connection between hat and writing. This is the inference. But what if before writing this, I had already stated that hat and writing are connected? And then I say I want to write, therefore I need a hat. So this now becomes more logical. Therefore, what is this? This can be a premise of the author. This is the assumption of the author. Which is why I said assumptions and inferences may share characteristics. What are those characteristics that they may share?
Drawing a conclusion in both.
The characteristics are that they are necessarily unstated directly. Somebody said this earlier. They're not stated in what is given to you. Yet, they are 100% true. So one of you said that, what has hat got to do with writing? But I'm saying no, they are 100% true, not necessarily in common sense, but they're 100% true with the given fact, with the given information. Because this is given, this has to be true. It's 100% true with this given information. I don't care what it means in common sense. So these characteristics that they're not directly stated, they're 100% true with the given information, could be the shared characteristics of assumptions and inferences. I'm not saying that they're always going to be the same. Here, the inference and the assumption were identical. Why? Because this was a simple statement. You were dealing with a very simple scenario. A reading comprehension passage or a critical reasoning paragraph, they're not going to be so simplistic. So, assumption and inference may not directly be the same always, but their characteristics are largely the same. Now, let's look at the same thing visually. This is an iceberg model. Iceberg models are used in many places to understand, describe lots of things. They're used in economics to look at the tip of the iceberg and what's going on below the water. Used a lot in psychology to understand the self, which is visible, versus the subconscious. Philosophy uses it. Many other fields of study make different use of the iceberg model. By the way, logic is a subject. Okay, let me ask you this. If you were to go do your undergrad in a particular subject, what is that field of study where you do logic as a paper? Logic will be one of the papers you study. Yes, Akshit, good. It's philosophy. Most people don't realize that. So philosophy is not illogical. It's based on logic. So if you were to do a class on logic, you would study the iceberg model. You'd study things like Venn diagrams. They're all part of a logic class in philosophy. Okay. But back to our iceberg model, what we're going to use it for is to understand how an argument is structured. Argument is not a negative word. We've already talked about this. An argument is somebody's point of view, what that person is arguing to prove, not a fight. So, what is above the water are facts and arguments which are stated and visible. But what is below the water, something that is not directly visible, are the assumptions of the author and by extension, the inferences of the reader. because they're both necessarily true, though unstated. And you will not know that you are actually studying unless, when you do RC, this is part of your dreams and nightmares. When you start telling yourself that below ice, if I remove the water, okay, and the whole iceberg is visible to you, below ice, there is going to be what? What are you going to see below ice? Isha, below ice, you're going to find what?
The water is removed.
If I remove this water, what am I going to find below the water?
The inferences.
No.
I'm not sure.
Put it in the context of the iceberg. If I remove the water, right now I can see only the tip of the iceberg. But if I remove the water below this tip of the iceberg, below this ice, what am I going to find?
The huge iceberg.
Okay, so below ice, I'm not going to find dolphins, sharks, whales. What will I find? There is more of what? More of the same ice?
Yeah.
I can't say this enough. And you may wonder why. Because when people get inference questions wrong, it's not because the question was difficult or we have to find out what is the understanding of the author and all of that. No. Fun fact is that a lot of people, they look at an inference or an assumption question and say, hey, this demands intelligence. Now is a question with which I can prove my IQ. But that is not what was required. All that was required was to do this. This is all that was required. Why word matching? Now you understand this? Because below ice, there's going to be more ice. If the para is made up of pen and hat and writing, answer will also be pen, hat, and writing. Look at this example that we did. I want to write, so I need a hat. The assumption on inference were about hat and writing. Nobody talked of Harry Potter sorting hat. Okay, thinking hat. No. Answer cannot come from other variables. That is what we mean by below ice, there's going to be more ice. That is what we mean by stick to word matching. You have to stick to word matching and location so that you don't go around finding dolphins under icebergs. And to break this myth that because it's an inference question or an assumption question, some intelligent stuff has to happen. No, it's boring. When you look at an answer and you feel, how can this be the answer? This is so obvious. That's when it's the correct answer. When you looked at this and say, what is the big deal? Hat and writing are connected is so obvious. That is what this is saying. Exactly. Because it is obvious, that is why it's the correct answer. It's not a test of your IQ or intelligence. In other words, now, assumptions and inferences are obvious, unstated truths as per the given information. The fancier your answer, the more incorrect your answer. Now let's get back to how to solve for inference. Weightage is the highest for inference and related questions. When I say related, in reading comprehension, further application is related to inference. Combined with critical reasoning, all of these are related: inference, strengthen, weaken, evaluation, paradox. This, when tested on reading comprehension, we don't list it separately, although we are applying all these rules. So the weightage is pretty high. Infer, suggest, imply, indicate. These are common ways of referring to inference. But then inference can play out in so many ways, no? Like we've already been saying that all of this gets ultimately clubbed under inference. So it's not restricted to this, but these are the most common indicators that show you that you are dealing with an inference question. Right now, we are talking about regular inference. I'm not dealing with the subtypes, just regular inference question. This will be the language, and what will be the steps we use to solve for it. Because inference is not something fancy, the steps will be related to how we were solving for a factual question. You will read the question stem and identify the point of reference. You will use vertical scanning to locate the point of reference. You will read for context, but now comes an important difference. You'll not simply go to the options. You will draw an inference. And if you can't draw the exact inference, that may not always be possible in just a few seconds, you will think of the model line of reasoning. This is usually doable. Line of reasoning implies, am I looking for something which is positive? Am I looking for something which is negative? Is it time-based? Is it speed-based? We've done all these structural indicators. So is it related to time? Is it going to be related to frequency? Is it going to be related to the concept of only? Is it going to be related to some causation? Will it be related to the idea of an opposite? I will at least have a line of reasoning. Once I have that line of reasoning, I'll go to the options, and now I'm going to eliminate and select on the basis of, yes, word matching, location, but idea matching with the model line of reasoning which I have come up with. So 90% you won't be able to come up with the exact inference that we're looking for, but you will find the direction to take. And then it will be easy to select and eliminate. I'm going to passage 1. Please try question number 7 here. Akshay, do you have access yet to the portal?
I do.
So on the portal in the practice material, you'll find these RC passages, class exercises 1, 2, 3, 4. We are on passage 1.
Sure.
Passage 1, question 7, everyone. You all gone with different answers. Others, what are your answers? I still see different answers, though I think the majority is going with C. Issei began to lease land from the valley's strawberry farmers. First, we'll find this location. This is the location. Next sentence says the Japanese provided the labor and the crop was divided between laborers and landowners. And you're calling this sharecropping. They moved from wage labor to sharecropping. This is your location. So these are the Japanese laborers. They are providing the labor and they're getting a share of the crop. Why are the landowners getting a share of the crop? What is obvious and unstated? That the landowners are providing land. That's why they're getting a share of the crop. Do we have any information that they were hiring other resale? We have no information. The boss system is the previous paragraph over here, and it is related to wage labor. There's an employee-employer relationship here. They have moved from wage labor to sharecropping. So this is not related to the boss system. That's the wrong location. All those who went with B. Isha, Anurag.
Got it.
Again, D talks of earning higher wages. They are no longer earning wages, Aishna. Shantanu, they have moved away from wage labor and now they're doing sharecropping.
I referred to the next line that you referred to. That's why I chose D.
That's why the next line says exactly that. No, they moved away from wage labor to sharecropping. This is sharecropping. So how are they earning higher wages if they are leaving wage labor?
Okay, yeah, right.
Shantanu? The idea of wages is gone. They're not hiring other ESA. We have no such information. Boss system is the wrong location. Wages are gone. Alien land law, again, wrong location. This will come much later. You may leave C thinking, oh, this is so obvious. But because it is obvious, it is the correct answer. Let's take a look at passage 4. Passage 4, please do question number 1. Okay, let's see your answers. You all gone with B? I think now you're getting the hang of it. Highly specialized trade media are over here. They expose members of the program target and only members of the program target to the marketing program. You had only, and you had the two 1M dashes. So you know this is going to get tested. You know this is where the answer is going to come from. So you do the idea match. And this is what you get. I hope no doubts here. Bhavisha, are you able to follow through?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now try question 3 here. Okay, let's take a look. Most of you have gone with C. I gave you time to look at the structure also that we had made of this. We found that in the case of the exception, direct selling was economical. But in the normal situation, direct selling was not economical, it was rare. So your answer could come from either of those locations. Either it's economical or it's not economical. That is why it is C. It's not economical under normal circumstances. Ayush, we don't know whether it's used in the marketing of most industrial products. We don't know the frequency.
Yes, the frequency we don't know. But there is something written about this also in the paragraph if you read. I was very confused between A and C actually.
Exception occurs when this happens. Example is what you've picked up, industrial products,
Yes.
a particular industrial product. How does this take you to most industrial products?
Yes, that's the mistake, I think.
Ma'am, here, how are we eliminating the option E?
How do you know whether it is successful or not than other marketing approaches? It is used in this scenario. Direct selling is used here and it is likely to be economically justified in this situation. But how do you know it is less successful than others? In general, how do you know?
So, I mean, I wasn't very sure, but a part of the sentence, if you scroll, there is mention of unfortunately only few media that allows this. So
That's the
that
conclusion
sentence,
of the passage. That's got nothing to do with direct selling.
okay.
And if there are few media that allow direct selling to the, exclusively to the particular program target, that's not the fault
Because
of direct selling.
the reason I was slightly also potentially tempted, because in this previous sentence it continues that even with all the past advances, direct selling is rare, and then the next sentence
Correct.
says
Direct
this.
selling is rare and mass marketing is more economically feasible. Economically feasible and successful are two different things, no? They're two different variables. How economical is something and how successful it is in achieving its goal. They're two different things.
Right. Got it.
You may own two pens. One may be more comfortable, one is less comfortable. But if the goal is how smoothly is it writing, how fast is it writing, one can be expensive, one can be cheaper. So, what is successful in fulfilling its goal of being a comfortable pen versus which one is more economical? There can be two different variables.
Right. Okay.
What you know is that direct selling is not economical under normal circumstances. It is economically justified under the exception. So either the answer has to say that in the exception scenario, direct selling is justified, it's economically feasible, and in the normal situation, it's not. One of these have to be the answers. Which is why, see, it's not feasible in most cases, in the normal cases.
Got it. Sure.
So what we've done is we've done question 1 and question 3. Now let's go back to passage 1. Look at question number 5. Indirect consequence. If A leads to B, then A and B share a direct or immediate relationship. If A leads to B and B leads to C, then A and C share an indirect relationship. I hope this is making sense. The question is indirect consequence. But it has to be correlated. It can't simply be a sequence of events. There has to be some correlation. Try question 5. Okay, so you have gone with C, most of you. I can see some of you have picked up A. What was the indirect consequence of the collapse of the sugar beet industry? Let's go back to the point of reference. This is it, collapse of the sugar beet industry. So we're going to label this A. This is point A. So what is B? B is sharecropping. A led to B. What is C? There is C1 and there is C2. C1 is economic progress. And what is C2? Forming an established Japanese American community. C1 and C2. It has nothing to do with the alien land law. It's got nothing to do with it. It comes much later. I told you that there has to be correlation. It simply cannot be a sequence of events. And even if you follow that sequence, alien land law comes much later. That is why it is not C, children's names. That is a consequence of the alien land law, not the collapse of the sugar beet industry. Boarding houses irrelevant, Chinese immigrants irrelevant, dislocation irrelevant. Don't get put off by this word permanent, if that is what put you off, because it clearly says established. Established here is not used as a verb. It's not they established a community. Verb is already here, forming. Established is an adjective here. They formed an established community. What does that mean? Here, established is an adjective. So it was permanent, it was stable, it was an established setting. That's why this word permanent is justified. And that's why you need to go over this word by word and do a word match. So all those who rejected A, I hope this is clear. Aishna, Anurag, Ayush, Sanjay, Dhrubaroop.
When you're coming in with this permanent one, how the objective and verb came into the picture?
If this were saying that they established a community,
Right?
then you don't know whether it's a permanent community. They're simply establishing it. Is it permanent, not permanent? We don't know so much. But when you are saying that they formed an established community, now established implies that it's stable, permanent, long term.
Okay.
That's why established here refers to permanent and not simply to the forming of the community.
Okay.
Let's try some inference questions now from OJ 12. Let's go to the first passage. We'll do a few inference questions and then I will pick up the homework. So passage 1, please do question number 3. Others, what are your answers? I've given you enough time. Now I'm guessing that you didn't do this passage for homework, so you've forgotten it. You all gone with A? Which of the following is a possible consequence of a company's adoption of innovations that increase its eco-efficiency? Could actually worsen environmental stresses? How? Reduce production waste, but do not alter number of products manufactured nor the waste generated from their use discard. That's a word match with B. Worsening environmental stress, you got a word match. Manufacture a greater number of products for use and discard. So B is a clear word match. So many of you have gone with A. But A talks of improvements in eco-efficiency. So does E, development of new innovative eco-efficiency measures. How is A different from E? All those who went with A? Aishna, Sanjay, Isha, Ayush, Ruparup. They're both talking about the same thing. And was our problem improvement in eco-efficiency? Was that the problem? Or was the problem that they're going to use the greater profits that they earn back into old style, eco-inefficient industries? That was the problem, no? Problem was not that we're looking for further innovation in eco-efficiency. So A and E will get eliminated because they're going on a new tangent and they imply the same thing. Little incentive to minimize, but they're saying that eco-efficiency is going to lead to significant cost savings. Why will they fail to have cost savings? It's vulnerable to competition. No, they're in fact going to have more cost savings, greater profits. B has a direct word match. I hope it's clear.
Ma'am, I have one doubt.
Yes.
So, it was stated that the inference will not be stated directly in the passage. We learned that. And I did not choose option because I felt that it's directly stated there, the exact word match and everything.
Okay. It will not be direct, but it will be obvious. You're forgetting this. Don't forget this. It has to come from the same words, which is why it's going to be obvious. Let me put it this way. A hard inference or related question. Pick an answer that simply restates what is already given. Don't pick something which is not even there. The answer has to come from what's already there, not from somewhere outside. Like we were saying, if we are dealing with an iceberg, your answer cannot be a dolphin. If we are dealing with worsening environmental stresses, if we are talking about products, the waste, the discard, if we are talking about how greater profits can go into eco-inefficient industries, how can my answer come from a different variable, a new variable, like improvements in eco-efficiency? The variables have to remain the same. The ice block has to be the same. The DNA has to be the same.
Mm.
That is why word matching and location matching.
Okay.
So when an answer feels too direct, that is the correct answer.
But
I'm going to passage number 3, the archaeology passage. Okay, we'll do that later. You're all familiar with passage 4 traditionally today. However, we've done this yesterday also in class. So for this passage, do question number 15. Let's see your answers. You all gone with D? There are two clear markers here. And yesterday I told you that plans and proposals, strategies, these are important keywords. There are two strategies here. Strategic alliances with other producers and distributors to manufacture and market their VCR format. And the other one refers to the perception of the customers. So one of these has to be the answer, which is why D. They are not going to do anything negative to get a positive reaction. So it can't be restricting, giving up early lead, retaining monopoly, sacrificing. They're not doing anything negative. One passage that we had discussed earlier for primary purpose, 31 to 35. Try question 33. All of you have gone with A? Anurag, you've gone with E? Service workers are here, no? In the US. So in the US, we're talking about the US government's definition then, right? And what happens then in the US to service workers? It categorizes workers based on the company's final product. Thus, the many service workers employed by manufacturers would not get classified under services. So what is the result? You're underestimating the number of workers. Anurag? Why E?
And the sentence that such ambiguities reveal that, sorry,
How do you know this is happening to most service workers? From where did this come? This is happening to service workers employed by manufacturers.
okay, yeah, understood.
We don't know the split, no? How many service workers are in service industries? How many service workers are in non-service industries? So we don't know most. But we know whatever the number, be it majority, minority, it is creating an underestimation.
Understood.
I have one doubt actually. So how this maybe will be acting upon EA actually?
Didn't get you. Please
No, no,
repeat.
this number of service workers, maybe it's quite obvious that they have underestimated it. Will the maybe kind of deviate that answer?
No. May leaves doors and windows open. It's a good sign for you on inference questions. They're anyway saying, they're also using language like would. They're not saying 100%.
Okay.
It's a possibility. Simply because we don't know the numbers.
Okay.
So for homework, you're going to complete inference questions. Passage 2, I'll give you some questions from here. Question 9 from passage 2. Passage 3, right now, I don't want you to do anything independently on inference. Passage 4, we've already done what we could. On the OG, we've done the first inference question. On passage 2, we don't have a significant inference question. Passage 3, you can try question number 10. Passage 4, we've done the inference question. Passage 5 has a couple of inference questions that you can do. Question 20. (22, 23). And for 31 to 35, we've already done the inference question. So for inference, this is your homework. Tomorrow we'll look at other types of questions. We will look at further application tomorrow. And once we've completed this discussion on inference further application, then you'll find that the other types of questions don't take us too much time. And from next week, for Tuesday, Wednesday, for a couple of days, we are going to be strictly focused on GRE style of passages. We'll move away from these generic passages and we'll stick to what a GRE passage would look like. Next week, we'll also start the vocab questions. So please, pull yourself up on vocab this week. Let's look at homework now. If you haven't done homework and you want to leave, you can, but let me take attendance, please. So I'm going to discuss homework now. We are starting with passage 2, questions 6 and 8. Passage 2, question 6, what are your answers? All are mentioned except you all gone with D. Let's verify discrimination in the labor market. Excluded from jobs, so it is there. Adjustment, that's also there. Adjustment of the immigrants. Effects of the revolution on LA, that the immigrants came there. Establishment of the neighborhoods is also there. Over here. But the formation of the society, that we don't know. We know that they studied the society that had already existed. But when did the society get formed? That's not discussed. That is why the correct answer is D. In except questions, you will have to pick up the options and verify. And usually except questions will be factual. Even if they're inference, they'll tend towards factual. So there's a thin line between factual and inference at times. I'll show you how. See this. Any confusion that we've had about inference versus factual, it should go away with this. The easier an inference question, more of the iceberg should get exposed. So it should be as easy as solving a factual question. The tougher it is, the less of the iceberg should be exposed. Now, the whole question should boil down to one small word in a dense sentence, hard to find. That's why the question is hard. Not because the information was not there. The information was there, but it was hard to process. This is normal. That is why at times inference questions feel just like factual questions, which is good for us when that happens. Why should we resist it? So this could have very well mean all of the following can be inferred from the passage except, and we'd solve the question in exactly the same way. Now look at question 8. What are your answers here? Oh, different answers. What do these books have in common? Their urban histories is pretty obvious. They provide a general understanding, they place in the larger context. That's what they don't do, no? They don't do these things. So if statements 2 and 3 said that they do not provide a general understanding, they do not place in the larger context, then it would be all three. Right now it's only one. Isha?
Um, I thought that we were understanding how the communities were formed. That's why I
They
thought,
provide a general understanding. The cons say that they do not, the books do not raise the question of the general understanding. They don't provide comparisons.
okay, yeah, yeah.
This is what they don't do.
Ma'am, I want to understand the number 3 one, because obviously if they are urban histories, that I was sure. Number 2 is not there, I was sure. I was very confused between option A and C.
Larger context is similar to general understanding, providing comparisons. Larger
So,
context refers to this only, that can we get a general understanding from it.
so the option says like they provide like they place the Mexican American immigrants' experience in the larger context of other American
Because
immigrants.
that is what they don't do. They don't compare with others, no? Neither study offers useful comparisons to other communities or compare with other Mexican and immigrant groups. So they don't tell you how it is in reference to the others.
Okay, I am very confused at this, but let me just read the passage again and let me just make out.
Larger context of other American immigrant experiences will come out in the form of comparisons, like were they similar, were they different?
Yeah.
And that's what the last para is saying, that they don't provide these comparisons, no? With other immigrant groups. All of these lines are talking about it. What's happening with other immigrant groups? How are they different from other immigrants? So other communities, they're not doing this.
Hmm. Okay.
Ma'am, the sixth question, can you explain that again? I still didn't get that.
Question 6, what was your answer?
For me, it was like E.
It's an except question. What is not mentioned? Establishment of immigrant neighborhoods is mentioned here. New immigrant neighborhoods.
Okay. But how is D? Uh,
D is not mentioned. That's an except question. All are mentioned except
but there
formation
is,
of this society is not mentioned. The existence is mentioned. That this
okay.
had existed. But when was it formed? That's not discussed. When was it formed? How was it formed?
Yeah.
Existence and
Bad.
formation are two different things.
Yeah, right.
So we found evidence for all the others. We did not find evidence for this formation of the society.
Got it. What about A? Like, what's the direct evidence for that?
Discrimination in the labor market is over here. that they were excluded from jobs.
Understood. Got it now. Thanks.
Okay. OG questions, I hope you've done at least some of them, if not all. Let's look at the first 2-3 passages. Passage 1, question 1, primary purpose. What's your answer? You have ecoefficiency here. Peter and Goran regard this as laudable. So that's positive. But could actually worsen. That's negative. So you have a pros and cons. And that is why the answer is C. You're presenting the concern. All of you have got it correct. Yes, Anurag.
Why it can't be E?
Is the problem economic impact or ecological impact? E is saying that they fail to understand the economic impact. And we are talking about environmental problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Scale is not the problem. That's why D is out. They have not caused damage inadvertently. First of all, caused is wrong because it could cause in the future. And it's not inadvertent. They know what they're doing. And less successful in doing what? If the agenda was eco-efficiency, if the agenda was cost savings, it is successful in that manner. And the problem is not that the strategy was not successful or will not be successful. The problem is what will people do with the benefits of it? That will cause problems. Question 2. C and D are your answers. Possible consequence of the realization of greater profits. This is the location. Greater profits may be turned into investment capital for old style, eco-inefficient industries. And they could grow into much larger, generate more waste, destroy more habitat, and so on. So prices is not a problem. Investment capital is not our problem. Reinvested to increase economic growth through eco-efficiency, that's not a problem. The problem is they won't do this. The problem is that they will invest in what is not eco-efficient. Shantanu? Isha?
I selected D only.
Okay. Let's look at question 4 now. So here, what I like about this passage, a recent study has provided clues in considering possible explanations for this finding. Then the explanation they consider most plausible. Such thorough carcass consumption implies to the researchers. These are your keywords. Now tell me what should be the answer for question 4. E is your answer? Why do we get E? Because of implies to the researchers. That's why it's the implications of a research finding. How do you know it's a research finding? Explanations for this finding. It's not a well-known fact. They've just found it. There's no debate going on. There's no controversy going on. And now do you see methodology as a trap here? What we were talking about, that methodology can be used as a trap on primary purpose answer choices. They've not told you what was the method of research. What is the method of data collection? So how can we come up with methodology as an answer? We can't do that. Now, what are your answers for question 5? Others, what are your answers? D and B are the answers I'm seeing. Compared with the Pleistocene carnivores, in the Labria area, what was going on? This should tell you about the location. This is about demographic, this is preservational. Then local is what we should talk about. They ruled out local bias because breakage data obtained from other Pleistocene sites was similar. That is why B, similar frequency. Anurag, Shantanu, Sanjay.
Why it's not D?
Consume their prey more thoroughly. What is the location for that? Can you tell me? Behavioral
The
difference
next line.
in
Okay.
extinct and present day carnivores. And what is the question about? Is the question about extinct versus present day?
No.
Shantanu, Sanjay? Question is about what's happening between Pleistocene carnivores in Labria versus other areas. This should take you to local bias, no? And then there's a word match. If it was similar, the breakage data is similar, then you have similar frequency of breakage. Question 6. Last question for today. You all gone with D? High frequency was caused by what? Now, this is the point of reference, what they consider plausible, which is by impact of teeth, D. It's got nothing to do with fights. It's not preservation bias. It's not preservation bias. It's not demographic bias. That's why D. Did you do question number 8? That's also a factual question. If the researchers had not found, then what would they conclude? So if we go to this one is related to the preservational bias. They rejected preservational bias because of a total absence of breakage in two species. This proved to them that the fractures were not a result of how it had been preserved. So if they had not found that evidence, they could have attributed the breakage to what? To damage to the fossil remains? How the fossils had been preserved? That's why it's A. Now they can't attribute it to fossil damage. We'll continue with these questions tomorrow. I'm adding them to your homework here. Any other question you have for me today?
Ma'am, I had a question
Tell me.
regarding how much time should it take us to solve the question. Like,
Right now, I'm not timing you seriously, but once you've done all the question types, once you're used to RC, average time per question is 1.5 minutes.
okay, that includes reading the comprehension and then answering it, or like
No, for reading the passage, we reserve 1 or 2 minutes extra in the beginning. After we have read the passage, 1.5 minutes is enough to look up the location, verify your answer, and pick the correct option.
all right.
Yes, Shantanu. Shantanu, you were saying something? Any other question? Anyone? No? Okay, see you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.